Live from the Redneck Suburbs of Nashville, Tennessee, it's the Podunk Polymath Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the sentiments of secular, sarcastic, screwed up SAW, and skeptic. I'm your host, Chris, less than attractive, but more than ugly. How y'all doing? This is episode, fuck, I can't remember. I think it's 80. Episode 80 sounds good. The Podunk Polymath Podcast. Hope y'all doing well. Uh, Nothing really to talk about as far as housekeeping. I did want to mention that the fundraiser I was doing for Launchpad, which is a homeless shelter. Well, it's a homeless shelter for people. It's LGBT friendly for youths, and I was able to reach my goal of $1,000. So I want to thank everybody who contributed to that. It really means a lot. So that's awesome. Let's see. I think it was my birthday. Yeah, that was my last week. I lose track of time because of the drugs. It's mostly the drugs. Also, I'm experimenting with having the mic further away so it doesn't show in the video. So if the sound's off or it doesn't sound as good or loud or whatever, let me know, and I will rectify it. So because I don't, having that big old thing right in my face, while might be good in some contexts, is not particularly good in video certain videos, but not this particular one. Anyway, I ramble on. So I want to go ahead and issue a content warning right now. This episode is going to involve topics such as PTSD, combat related things, and suicidal ideation. So if those are things that are triggering or make you uncomfortable, please listen with caution. Having said that, I want to go ahead and introduce my guests, Hiram and Nate. How y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
All right. I think I have some. There we go. So first of all, why don't y'all tell a little bit about yourselves?
All right. Well, my name is Hiram Jensen. I was Army for 5 years. 8 months in the Army, I took an armor-penetrating bullet through the femur the long way. Stuck in country for 4.5 days. It was on a training exercise. So stuck after there for 4.5 days with no medical care other than putting water over it. So my femur is twisted and I'm missing the left side of my ass cheek. Stayed in for 4 years, little over 4 years, longer than that after reclassing from infantry to military intelligence. Did military intelligence for one tour, a 12-month tour in Afghanistan, Marga, Paktika province, right on the border of Pakistan. And we were attacked nearly every day with mortar fire and direct arms fire at least once a week. And then I came back. The Army told me I was too broken to stay in, and I got medically retired.
Yeah.
Okay. Nate?
Yeah. And hello, everyone. My name's Nathan Allen. I was in the U.S. Navy for 4 years, honorably discharged. I was, my first 2 years, I was stationed on Theodore Roosevelt, which was an aircraft carrier. And it was in the yards at the time when I was on it, just beginning its sea testing trials. During that time, I witnessed, I think, probably 2 or 3 suicides. For me, the first one I saw was day 15 while I was in. So, from the get-go, I had a very real eye-opening experience just even from the yards. And then after that, I made NCO, finishing out my last 2 years where they made me a helicopter mechanic in the Navy. It's called Aviation Machinist Mate. My platform was the MH-60 Sierras at a naval station, Norfolk. And, we did a bunch of tours there, and it's very prone to, I'd say it's accidentally prone, but as a result of that, you also have stuff going. It's not just the combat side of it, I guess, is what I want to stress by that statement. It's just even being around the equipment or the activity or the lifestyle itself. poses the opportunity for error to occur. So, I mean, I saw stuff there, even just what I mean by that, an example would be a hangar fire. You know, you see people getting hurt and beat up by that kind of stuff just for getting half burned up on an accident or a fuel spill or something like that, you know, so.
Drop the starter engine or motor for a tank on a dude's knee and vertically compressed his shin.
Right. I mean, I feel like and that's not just subject to the military, that's just the world, I think, accident prone stuff. But in the military related experiences, I mean, we wrote down a couple series of events if you are curious about that. But in short, that's me.
Okay. So, yeah, I was just going to kind of course, as I said in the intro, we'll be talking about some PTSD related stuff. And of course, I've just found out that somebody I know has PTSD, but it's not combat related. So, once you kind of, what you know of PTSD, what is PTSD exactly?
Well, I've been diagnosed with both PTSD and non-combat PTSD. Non-combat PTSD related to religious abuse, actually. I grew up Mormon, and somehow the LDS Church got my orders before I did. They knew what base I was going to before I did, what company and what platoon I was going to. And my mom knew. And it was when I first arrived, get out of basic, get out of all my AITL schools, go to my first duty station in Germany. It tells me I'm going to bus station, essentially. That's what my orders say. So I get to the bus station, I get picked up. I'm the only person going to this company. I'm assigned to a lieutenant who's a Mormon. He comes walking out to me. He's like, you're Jensen. I just got off the phone with your mom. She told me to take you to church with me, and I laughed at her and hung up and told her hell no, or heck no.
That is creepy.
Yeah, it was creepy, and it didn't stop there. That was the middle of 5 years, at least. That was when I was 24. It started when I was 19.
Well, shit, that's plenty of fucked up.
And I didn't get my name removed until after I was out of the Army.
So yeah, you're prone to it to begin with, I guess.
Yeah.
From the background right there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But with that, or with a PTSD related to similar overbearing incident or overbearing stressor like that, it is like a figure or a religion or culture, what have you. That's a really it gives you a much more generalized anxiety, and it makes it, in my experience, it makes it harder for, like, I have a harder time functioning outside of the house. And for other reasons as well that compound on that, and we'll go into that came out later. But and we'll go into that when we get the physiological problems with related to having been blown up. By the way, I can't hear you, Chris. I took these out because I get a reverb.
Do you have these on?
Sure. Whoever's talking can wear that one. Okay, that's better. So, where was I? Right. So, with that kind of stressor, it's like I have a hard time with going to grocery stores and stuff, or making decisions and things like that because of the anxiety related to that. The anxiety of it being the wrong decision. Do I buy the wrong meal or something? And do I cook the wrong thing or something? I could see how that could be a stressor for someone who's in a long-term physical abuse relationship or something. But sorry, what? I don't know what's going on. I thought it was
Is that better? Okay, I think I fixed it. No? Hello?
Yeah, there's something bad.
It's these headphones? I don't know about the headphones. Must maybe the word about something. I see the time settings here. Can I turn these off? Okay. Alright, we just turned that off. Hopefully that's better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll just go with the speaker then, and we'll suffer the sound consequences. With my type of like having been stalked by a culture or a cult or religion, they, or a whole state basically had to flee the state really to feel comfortable. I live in Colorado now. I like going to a grocery store or something where I know a whole bunch of people are going to recognize me. Like all my neighbors will recognize me, and I feel like I'm being tracked by neighbors and by people. That is a form of PTSD that I have that's not combat related. So, yes.
So yeah, and I wanted to touch in on that. From you asked, what is PTSD to us? For me, I was writing it down. I would just, to put it in basic terms for those that don't know, I'd say it's a traumatic event that occurred that stresses your brain to its maximum capacity. So that being said, that's why you have neurological reactions, or which can then affect your physiological reactions or whatever. So to relate it to what he's saying. So that being said, like that's why you have like stress or anxiety, or you have or social anxiety, you have generalized anxiety, you have insomnia, you have a series of effects, I think, that are associated with it. So to put that in a perspective, a basic example is if someone hit you in the head with a baseball bat and it made a snapping sound every time, and that hurt you and it stressed you out and it stressed your brain to its maximum capacity, then every time you hear that snapping sound, you're going to be thinking about that event. And everyone's affected differently, but the acidity in your stomach might increase. You might get nauseous. You might be very irritable in a social environment because of the multi-sensor stimulation that's going on, and you're not able to process it as fast. I mean, everyone's different, but that's just what I wanted to touch in on it real quick.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get down to kind of the you mentioned the non-combat related PTSD. Now let's kind of get into, I guess, the meat of it. I guess I don't know if that's a good word to use, but that's an unfortunate word to use, perhaps. But Hiram, you had mentioned, of course, that you've been in combat. What are some instances? Was there a specific instance that kind of triggered this, or was it just the overall experience, or was it like a combination?
I have one specific instance where I was blown up in most of the blast. I didn't have any flame or shrapnel or anything, but the blast hit me in the back of the skull and caused a bunch of physiological damages to the brain, and that caused me nearly completely face blind. I have a separation from hunger. I don't feel when I'm hungry anymore, which yeah, fun. And she's actually trained to Nastia here.
Why don't you go ahead? Yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce the dog, since he just I can't remember. Just decided to wander up into the conversation there.
She's gonna just be coming up cuddling us as we talk, because we're gonna get stressed out, and she's trained to cuddle us when we're stressed. But she's trained to tell me when I'm hungry, tell me when I'm relax us when we're too stressed and all of that. She's a part Anatolian Shepherd, which is a kind of Mastiff, and part Husky. So she's got the real nursing mama attitude. and also I had to be really specific with a lot of things about her. She was the second dog I trained. The first one was Anatolian and Pyrenees, so a full Mastiff. And she had some social failures and she succeeded in being an ESA, but not a like an emotional comfort animal for someone's house, but not for taking out into public. But Nastia here is sorry, she's a little hot. So she's trained to help me stand and walk is her main thing, is mobility assistance to make up for the muscles and bones that are screwed up in my left leg. Makes up for a lot of balance. But in addition to that, she helps comfort us when we're stressed out, when one of us gets too riled up or something. So if that happens, she might just come up and shove a face in our face.
You know, and what
she does the same thing.
I appreciate that animals that constantly are observing that nonverbal communication too. I appreciate that, and that's something with relevance to PTSD for sure. Is a lot of times you'll get caught up in the moment. You don't even realize how you're acting, what you look like, or you might not see the same things around you, whatever.
Totally.
And it's great having that tangible thing in front of you to touch and bring you to that present moment and force you to be in that moment rather than somewhere else.
He has an emotional support chihuahua.
Yeah.
I have a regular chihuahua. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not, but no, I have a chihuahua. Yeah.
The emotional support dog, all it really requires is for them to cuddle you and to be nice and to be house trained. And then you go through have them certified through some, whatever your landlord requires, and then just to let it in your apartment or whatever.
Well, the house training with a chihuahua is a pain in the ass. I can tell you that right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to your incident there that you were speaking of. So you said it caused you face blindness. What is face blindness exactly?
I can't remember the distinct features or individual features, and I can't Sorry, I step back and do say things clinically sometimes. Think of how to reword things. So face blindness is generally caused by damage to the right temporal fold, this section of the brain here. So basically, we had a car bomb. It was a Land Rover Defender 110, the long wheelbase Defender, shoved with so many explosives it was riding straight on the axles, run into our base. They blew it up. The video was on the news. You might still be able to find it. I don't know. Blew it up 85 meters away from me. I was on the other side of a wall with a big door that you could drive a John Deere Gator through. And the door blew off. The blast blew that door off and into my back, broke two of my ribs here, and directed the blast to my head. Caused a little bit of hearing loss, face blindness, the separation of my hunger in my brainstem, caused there was another one. Oh, pseudobulbar. Caused a persistent recurrent pseudobulbar effect.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that. What is that?
That is the easiest way to put it is emotional incontinence. So sometimes something will make me a little bit happy, but I will just laugh gleefully. And I can't control my laughing and I can't stop laughing and there's nothing I can do. That is less common, and I don't think many people see that. But I know he's seen me cry uncontrollably for stupid things, or just get caught in a loop and just cry uncontrollably and be unable to stop it. Or uncontrollable anger isn't really a thing with pseudobulbar effect, but from what I understand from my therapist and such, but the and I don't have that anyway, but uncontrolled shaking or fear sometimes related to just something that doesn't make any sense, like a neighborhood cat jumped on a window. Not like they're the normal things that are my PTSD triggers I respond to normally, you know. But
it's extreme.
Some things that are weird.
I think it's a lot of extremes. I would think to put it in the psycho side of it, aside from just the physical effects of it. I think psycho side is its extremes. Like being startled, you don't have like it's just a cat on the window. It's a boom. It's something else. It's life. You know, it just hit.
A pseudobulbar effect or a PBA can happen to anyone. It does tend to happen with PTSD and other anxiety disorders or schizophrenia disorders, other things like that. But having a recurrent and persistent pseudobulbar syndrome is more rare, and it tends to be really highly correlated, from what I understand, to traumatic brain injuries.
Okay, that's you had mentioned TBI. I'm like, what is that? That's traumatic brain injury. Okay.
Oh yeah. And I have a blast-related traumatic brain injury, which blast-related traumatic brain injuries are tend to cause more physiological damage in the long term, basically because it shakes all of the little components in between instead of just hitting the front and the back of your brain like a concussion. You're smashing the brain around in there. It's gooifying the whole thing, like shaking it all up like a bowl of jelly.
Okay.
So when they do autopsies on veterans who've been blown up, they find sort of what's been described as a fine white powder all over the surface of the brain matter. And they think that slows things down a lot, or impedes some electrical transfers and not other electrical transfers.
I wonder if that's similar to the effects we're seeing with constant concussion through NFL players having that syndrome.
I totally do. I think it's very similar. If you think about where they're concussing, they're hitting the same parts of the brain. The front of the brain and right around both temporal folds in the brainstem.
Yeah, I encourage anybody to go check that out.
That's just based on my knowledge of anatomy.
Well, there's a documentary Frontline did about it, and Seasons of Denial, I think it was called. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but that's if you want to know about the repetitive brain injury. I forgot the exact name. There's a name for it, but go check that out and go see how a major corporation covers things up. Imagine that. Anyway, that's a different show. So after that, is he okay?
Yeah,
I'm just putting the dog away so she's not
okay.
on the limelight here.
So after that happened, were the effects immediately noticeable, or was it something that took time or to manifest itself?
I didn't know. Well, I recognized I learned about PBA about this around the same time I learned about my face blindness, and that was, but rather than starting from that aspect, I'd rather tell the story a different way.
Okay.
So, because this is a more relatable way, I think. So I get out of the Army, and I don't admit I have PTSD. I don't admit I have any of these problems. I don't admit any mental problems other than insomnia. So,
well, a lot of that is probably a pride thing too.
Yeah, pride
when
thing.
You separate out,
yeah.
You're not. It's not something you talk about. It's seen as a weakness to most.
It's seen as a weakness.
Social pressure. So,
the only person you're allowed to talk to is a chaplain.
Yeah.
About it. If you talk to anyone else about it, that's trouble, and you can't always trust all the chaplains to not tell people. So I get out. I don't tell anyone. I didn't tell doctors. Didn't go see behavioral health or anything like that when I was in. I get out. I had a rocky time getting out. I lived in a motorhome for a while, or an RV for a while. I finally saw a therapist here in Grand Junction, Colorado, at the VA therapist, and we're like, okay, definitely have PTSD. We got to work on that. And she's like, no, we can't stop at saying you have PTSD. You have to refine what it is, how it affects your life, and how you work around it. So I kept trying to refine it and define it. And all of that, trying to really care about it and stop saying it was just, oh, it's just PTSD, whatever. I'm just a guy with PTSD. I'll just live like that for the rest of my life and just have that excuse. It's actually kind of part of the story of how we met. I just got divorced, just moved to here to a town I'm comfortable, and had a severe memory loss incident where I woke up and had no idea I knew no idea where I was, what age I was. I knew who I was, but I didn't recognize my house. I didn't recognize anything in my house. I was just walking around being like, yeah, that looks like the kind of pillows and curtains I'd buy. And I had the Veterans Crisis line on my phone and called that, and after a couple of hours and a long day of going to therapists and whatnot, he was working at a veterans service organization, and he really helped me. Like, I walked into everywhere around that I knew that if I forgot where I was while I was out walking or something, I could, it would be somewhere I'd walk into. So I went to hardware stores, coffee shops, and the veterans place and said, hi, I'm Hiram. I had some type of memory loss. I don't know what happened, but if I get lost sometime, I'll probably just come in for coffee. And if I look really lost, yeah, please,
yeah.
help me out. And of course, introduce the dog too, because she was in training at the time.
Yeah, I remember that when he did come in, that was something. I was a manager at the veteran organization at the time, and one of the things he requested is, hey man, do you mind just giving me a call 1 to 3 times a week just to make sure I'm okay, verify it, whatever. And there was a couple times, I'd give him a call and he had no idea who I was. I mean, it took probably 5 consistent phone calls on throughout a weekly basis, on a daily basis, to where eventually it became a thing and reoccurring as a reminder. And I don't know how much that assisted, but I think it's important for people with mental health disorders or any kind of issues to reach out and have a support structure. And that I applaud him for doing that.
That was while I was working a full-time job. I'd go out for a smoke break, and the bright light of outside would trigger a brief tension headache and trigger that forgetting. And I'd forget that I worked there, forget where I was, and just be like, well, I guess I'll just stand here until someone says something.
Did you find there were triggers that made that happen?
It was light.
The lights.
That's what we deduced. We figured it all out, and it was based on light causing tension headaches. That's why I always put on sunglasses before I go outside, and whenever it's bright out. But learning that, I have a coping mechanism now. I can put on sunglasses. I can wear, like more bandanas that I can quickly pull down over the top of my, like, to keep light from coming in around the edges of my sunglasses and stuff. So if you know with specificity what your problem is, instead of just saying, oh, I've got PTSD, you can work on trigger or on mechanisms and coping mechanisms.
I agree.
Now, if you go through old pictures of me, I'm sure you'll find pictures where I have a curled mustache that reaches out to the underside of my eyes after I get out of the Army.
That's badass, by the way. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I kind of miss it, but on the other hand, I don't miss the upkeep. Turns out the reason for it was so I could recognize myself.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because I'd get up before the break of dawn, split wood, start a fire, because I was living off grid in a motorhome with my wife at the time. And I'd be walking by all shiny surfaces and mirrors, and I started to grow the mustache because it scared me less because I could recognize myself in the mirrors better. It wasn't until this spring or this February that I actually realized and knew that I had face blindness, which is, by the way, called prosopagnosia. But I didn't know that I had it until then, but that was a coping mechanism. And part of my realizing I had it was in January, I shaved off the mustache. I'm walking through my house and it's the middle of the night and I've got some little doors on like a cabinet that have glass in them, right? And it's dark. And I see myself in the reflection and I don't have the mustache anymore. I have a beard now. And I almost put my hand through the glass because I thought there was someone standing right there in front of me. Because I cannot recognize my own face in the mirror without thinking about it. I look at him and I look at me in the mirror right now with the way his beard is trimmed. We look exactly the same to me if I put my hair in a ponytail. It's so, but knowing I have that, I can work around that, instead of just telling people, oh, I won't remember your name. It's like, oh, I'll remember you based on situation or based on name, but I'm totally face blind, It's not that I forget you, it's that I don't recognize your face. If you change your hair from purple to blue, you're going to have to reintroduce yourself.
What about voice? Sorry.
Voice is fine. Yeah, I'm pretty good at recognizing voice. So over the phone, I'm all right. Yeah, but the
would it be helpful if like for example, you were saying if you changed your hair color, if you went ahead and said right away, "Hey, it's me, so and so," so you could hear your voice and like, "Oh, it's that person."
Oh yeah, I asked my friends like who like change their hair a lot, or I've got friends who are always changing their facial hair, which I asked him to do that. Just be like, if he does a abrupt change to his facial hair, just be like, oh hey, it's me, Ham. I remember. Oh yeah, it's you. Okay, cool. Because then I can be like, okay, now that's what your facial, because like facial hair or having a bright colored hair or jewelry or something, or a style. Those are all things that are easy to remember. But and that's not something that's isolated or even really common among veterans, although it is fairly common among, or it is theorized to be more common among veterans with blast-related TBI. And I know I'm strappy right now, but there's nothing I can do about that. All right. I want to take oh yeah, also learning about learning about all the specificities of your PTSD, learning about what your triggers are and how to work around them or work with them.
That can suck though, because that means you have to identify, like you have to relive those issues. A form of therapy that I had to go through was prolonged exposure therapy. And that was, reliving in vivid detail that issue. And then, you'd sit there and you'd write it out. And so it's in plain view in front of you. Okay, clearly an example for me is red lights. So, all right, red lights really piss me off. It stresses me out instantly. I instantly jump to that level, what's it called? The SUDS level, the stress level. It just jumps up instantly.
Mine is children carrying small things or random things. Because one of my major jobs, I would fly a little Nerf football-sized drone over a patrol and look at all the kids coming up to the patrol to see, are they looking for candy or are they looking to blow us up? And so my prolonged exposure therapy, I spent 10 months, 2-3 days a week, getting pretty stoned, going to Target and hanging out in the Lego aisle. Well, kids running around me with random boxes and toys and stuff.
Yeah, but that's awesome. Like that's working on it. At least, taking effort to be aware.
And that was with, therapy and all that as well, with a VA therapist, prolonged exposure, cognitive behavioral therapy.
So So these things, obviously, these are going to cause major stress if you're having to go prolonged therapy, exposure therapy. If you're comfortable, did you have? I'm sure you did have suicidal ideation on several occasions.
No, it would be.
Yeah, very much so. Yep, very much so.
Well,
Go ahead.
take off.
Yeah, I'll start with that one. For me, in correlation to the topic of PTSD, I didn't know what PTSD was or anything actually until I got out. Looking back now that I'm aware of the triggers and whatnot, like I was flipping tables in the middle of the night, drinking myself to like crazy. Which again, I see the extremes. You know, you can't just have one beer; you have to have the whole case or something like that. I guess I don't know. It's that completion mindset or something, but the extreme side, I didn't, there seems to be a common solidarity trend for everyone where there's divorce, there's meaning your relationships you can't maintain, or you have a lack of caring or whatever.
You can't hold down a place. You can't stay in one place. You live out of your car. You live out of your motorhome.
I mean, for me, I didn't know that I had PTSD or anything until one day, I just kept finding myself racking rounds to my head because it was the only way I could genuinely feel present in the moment, because I kept hearing so many other things, or I was so worried about other things. I was too hyper aware. I just couldn't relax, or I felt like I didn't matter. I wasn't doing good enough now, like that I didn't have sense of purpose anymore, or just a bunch of stuff. And it took literally, a wrapped around to the head to calling the VA saying, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I talked to my main doctor and they said they just dismissed me, but I went to this mental health thing, and thank God I did, because it brought the awareness. I would say, and the awareness of the triggers, the awareness of reliving the event, the severity that these things had to me. I had no idea that it affected my brain even. But looking back, I see how it does. I see why it affects sleep, how it affects relationships, your career, everything. It's literally a whole full circle things.
It's not just the training; it's the lifestyle, and it gives us veterans especially veterans who've been on multiple deployments, require a sense of purpose, because you're on 24/7, 365.
Yeah,
you're on all the time. Yeah. You can be called to action anytime. Even when you're back in garrison, you can be called to action to go back and do charge of quarters or something. Just put it on the yard. To do which charge of quarters is being the guy in charge of making sure nobody does any dumb fuckery in the barracks, which there's a lot of. Hey, your fiance's dad's calling now. So for me, I have less, I guess, realized suicidal tendencies, but every morning still I have a little bit of like, today could be a day of complete boredom, or I could kill myself. I'm gonna go find something to do.
Is it that, like, just mundane or whatever?
Well, civilian life is boring when you're used to being shot at all the time. I had a mortar blow apart my bedroom wall. I was out in a soft cap and no armor, picking up pieces of the bomb that blew me up, the truck that blew me up. And I hear of a mortar coming in. And I look up and I see the blur, and I hug a wall, and the mortar strikes the other side of the wall I hugged.
Jesus.
So it's like, after that, being shot at every day, being the guy, like I was the intelligence guy, or one of the three on that base. Me, Sergeant Kurtz, and Specialist England. And we got we our joke, we were supposed to have a lieutenant in charge of our intelligence unit. So our joke was, I ordered a Magic 8 Ball and painted a little uniform on him with paint marker, named him Lieutenant Ball, because everyone would come in at the beginning of the day and ask us if we were going to get attacked that day. So I just had him roll the Magic 8 Ball because it was 50-50.
And that's like a prolonged living environment of consistent stress.
Yeah, living in that consistently, and then, but not only living in that, but preparing for that beforehand and winding down for that afterwards. You know, all of, at least my wife said I was a different person before and after deployment. You know, for like 2-3 months before deployment, I was different. You get into a game mode.
Yeah, you're more hyper aware. You know, you're just,
serious, severe.
It's hard, and that's hard to turn off, especially after being in a traumatic event. For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And when I was operating as CQ, we had a not exactly a negligent discharge, but a failure and giant screw up cause someone from a range to accidentally fire a bunch of 50 cal bullets from a machine gun into the parking lot I was in charge of, including an occupied car and an off-base German elementary school.
What the fuck?
I was the building closest to the range, the closest occupied building to the range. And yeah, it was all sorts of crazy. That was after I was shot. So I'm just sitting there with crutches and a phone, just being like, I'm calling everyone I can. I'm getting everything I can out there. Something needs to stop because we are still getting fired at. Calling everyone, like this is when people were coming back from lunch. So I'm calling everyone's squad leaders to say like, hey, tell your guys lunch needs to be extended for like an hour. You know, but so even when you're back in garrison, that can happen. So you're still prepared for that. And then you get out. And then you get out.
Yeah, and then you get out.
Then you fish.
Well, and then being disabled. That's a whole other side of it, you know, because you can't do the things you used to do even beforehand, physically, right? Like one thing that we love to do that's been highly recommended is fishing, right? That's actually how we met, is at a veteran fly fishing retreat. And even something as simple as carrying a chair or his fly rod for him or something, or even me, like both of us use canes for crying out loud. It's just that I wasn't blown up like he was. So it's simple things. You can't just go hunting anymore like you used to. You can't just
you can't go backpacking.
I was an MMA fighter before the Navy. I can't do that anymore. I mean, it's just different. So that too does a toll on you, and whether you feel that self-worth or that that sense of purpose.
You got to find something to dedicate yourself to, or something to give you a sense of purpose. And some guys who find that in religion. Some guys who find that in family, or although a lot of that doesn't work. Some guys who dedicate themselves to starting a company, or doing this, that, or the other.
Yeah,
they're dedicated to, and then you get the people who I encountered when I was living off grid, who are dedicated to the gold fringe on the flag and the sovereign citizen movement. And
oh boy,
Bundy militias. I was actually asked to be recruited to the Bundy militia right before that wildlife refuge thing kicked off. I left partway through the shindig.
God.
And it was being led by some stolen valor dude.
Oh God, those are the worst. That's a huge thing, is that stolen valor thing. People get mad about that.
Yeah, this was a guy who got kicked out of basic and then claimed he was a ranger or something like that. I can't really remember. There's something somewhere about me talking about it on NPR or Colorado Public Radio, one of the two.
Oh, okay.
And talking about being chased off my land by the sheriffs down there as well. That was on Colorado Public Radio. I know that. Okay, so whenever I'm out with Nastia, this is something I do want to talk about real quick. I just wanted to scroll, look at the notes and think about this. Whenever I'm out with Nastia, she is a big, scary-looking dog, but she is very well behaved, very nice, and she only barks when it is service required of her. Like a dog is on off leash inside of a store, she will bark at that dog because that dog does not belong to be, if it's a service dog next to a person, that's different. If she can recognize that. But if there's like dogs running around through Target, which has happened. So she's very well behaved. So when I'm out and about, people come up like, hey, so how do you go about getting a service dog that's this nice? But that's the wrong way to look at it. I think it's look at what services do you need fulfilled and what is the best animal to fulfill that. Because I didn't train the dog to be the thing. I chose the dog that was right and then trained from there, right? So when people say like, I want to take my poodle and make it a service animal, that's but like when you're looking for having a real service animal for mobility assistance for her, or seizure assistance, or diabetes, or hunger like her, or PTSD like her, she if I get night terrors, she will lay over my leg, both my legs, and jump up from the bottom of the bed onto my legs and use her pressure to hold me down. And I wear a sleep monitor, and since then my average length of sleep has gone from 2.5 hours to 5.5. So yeah,
step in the right direction.
Yeah. So but you need to look at what needs you're looking to fulfill. Are you looking for a dog that, for someone with severe PTSD who needs to be comforted, needs something big that will comfort them like that will snuggle them when they need it? Look for a Newfoundland or a Malamute, or the Malamutes can be a little protective, or like her, she's an Anatolian Shepherd mix, which is a type of Mastiff. And the other thing that I had to do and be really conscious of was I spayed her right at the beginning of adolescence, so that she was just barely motherly and just barely maternal, but wouldn't be protective or like overprotective or anything. Should be open to allowing other people into the family, into the pack. If you wait until after puberty, generally females have a problem with that, especially female guard breeds like this, because the females are the boss of the pack in a large sheep guard breed. So,
would dog therapy be useful in other contexts? Is it? I don't know how far your experience goes as far as dog therapy in general. If it's like, I've heard of a program where prisoners are, put together with shelter dogs, and it's kind of helpful for both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's out of Colorado Springs.
We have, yes, and that is a good program. I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I looked into that program, and they said that it would be better for me with I need a dog specific for my mobility assistance. And they said, you'd probably be better off training a dog, so we'll help you find the right dog at a shelter. And she was a rescue from she was a breeder failure, basically.
So when you got her, did you feel more sense of purpose in your life?
Oh yeah. But I think now I found that better than defining a sense of purpose, and not just having a routine, because a routine is how you get into, something that Yeah, how you get stuck and suicidal, long run. How you get to feeling like a potato after too long. You know, like you're just overcooking and yeah, I don't know. But I've found that having like art therapy, things like that. He does painting. I do aquascape.
Aquascape. What's that?
We can show you if you want. I have 4 aquariums. 3 of them are pretty. 1 of them is not.
Okay, I mean that's cool.
And they're really calm. They're really relaxing. But having something that I have to take care of and can make changes to, and all of that. But it's you know, having been military or having been intelligence and in charge of like monitoring all of the threat conditions around a base, monitoring the conditions of a couple of populations of fish seems soothing, right? While listening to podcasts, of course, instead of listening to the radio chatter.
Or playing music. Yeah. Anything expressive.
Yeah, or playing music. Yeah, but especially playing and recording.
Nate, did you want to briefly talk about your experience?
Yeah, no, I'd be more than willing to. I'm just taking a bunch of notes here and all that, but to put it in broad, I was in a gas exposure that has done a full kind of total damage on my whole body. I have irritable bowel syndrome, and I've been throwing up on a daily basis for ever since 2012. I take a whole variety of medications for that. So there's a mental side that even if without PTSD goes, like I was saying earlier, to the side of that disability. Meaning like you wake up in that example, when I wake up and throw up, it's very disabling or very discouraging for the rest of the day, not only because of how down your body feels, but you're just kind of like, what is the point? I'm not as much, I'm not the value again, the self-worth, there's that. So that's just one of the instances. For me, when I hear helicopters flying around, being, like I said, I was a helicopter mechanic. The primary thing of that squadron was search and rescue. We did have a helicopter crash from a neighboring squadron off the coast once, and we had to go recover. And I actually knew those sailors individually that passed away. And cleaning up their blood and everything else out of my own helicopter certainly was not a good experience for me. So I always, when I hear the helicopters flying around, that imagery comes to my mind. It brings a tear to my eye just driving around when I hear something like that. Like I mentioned, the red lights earlier. I didn't even know that was an issue for me realistically until I started going to prolonged exposure therapy with the VA. I did that for 1.5 years, actually, the first go around, and I'm really thankful I did, because it highlighted or brought to light a lot of stuff that I had no idea I had going on, or why it was stressing me out. Like Hiram was saying, the awareness of your stressors or your triggers. So red lights for me, that's something, and one of this is going to sound dumb, but this is the point being that you need to take initiative too, like to change your life. Everyone can say, go to a psychiatrist and they'll give you a bunch of pills. Great. So now you're just a math problem, and they're, a math problem for a bunch of pills to see what'll happen. And that does work for some people. That's fine. I understand everyone's brain chemistry is different. But back to the psychological side of it, I would say is identifying the root issue of what's bothering you or why you have an issue with whatever it might be. And that's applicable to anything, not necessarily just PTSD.
Adjust your life around that which you can, and use the really hard and extensive and painful cognitive, behavioral, and prolonged exposure therapies to fix what you can't. Like I can't fix when I'll be around kids. So I had to condition myself to not be afraid of kids anymore. But I am still afraid of big black station wagons and big black SUVs, Suburbans and stuff. So I live where everyone has Jeeps.
Right.
or Subarus.
Yeah. So environment, surrounding yourself, and Chris, I think that's important too. Is your environment, like he mentioned his aquascape and aquariums that he does. It's important to surround yourself with positivity. You know, I listen. We have long hair, yeah, I get that, and of course we listen to reggae, sure. But there is that environment is incredibly important, bro. I'm telling you. You sit there and you listen to death metal music all day when you're already a high-strung person. What in the hell did you think was going to happen? You know what I mean? Like, of course you're going to be worked up and stressed out or whatever. Each to their own. I get it. Each to their own. Whatever helps you. But realistically, environment is what I'm going after by that comment.
Mm-hmm.
Surround yourself with things, and like earlier, the support structure. So to bring that back to PTSD, that was something that I was divorced and cheated on, and the whole thing, right? And that is a common thing that you see with all this, because the disconnection that can occur, or the emotional disconnection that occurs with mental health. It's brought to light, I should say.
Yeah, after combat PTS, it's really hard to give a shit about little day-to-day things, even in a relationship. And,
right, because nothing is as extreme as that.
Yeah, so you have to be like our friend who fucking climbs 14ers all the time and skis, does all sorts of crazy things.
Travels to South America constantly.
Yeah, or our other friend who's blind and does the same thing. Or if you can't do that because you're physically broken or what have you, you have to accept it and teach yourself to care.
I can. Is it a struggle? I mean, is it something? How difficult is it for y'all to kind of? I mean, I think a lot of people take it for granted that they just can just be. You know what I'm saying? Like they just live their life and go to work and wherever the fuck you need to. But do you find that it's a struggle just to kind of get yourself to care about shit?
Unless I feel it matters.
Yeah.
Unless I define a way that it matters, yeah, it really can be. Jobs I was working before, it was like I had to define a way that job was making a difference in the world, making a difference to other people. When I bought this house, I'm like, how can I make this house make a difference to other people? You know, I'm gonna, can I talk to the city council and have like a free pantry on the corner or something? And I've got a large lot. Can I have a community garden out of the back? You know, I'm trying to find a way to make everything I do matter, because something has to matter as much as what mattered back then, right?
Always be progressive.
Yeah. But what I'm currently working on that matters to me is I'm trying to learn enough to hopefully in a year or two start breeding a species or a couple species of threatened South American catfish that people overfish for aquariums.
Okay.
And they're not yet bred in America. Or in the U.S., I should say, because America does include Brazil, and that's where South America, where they're from.
So let's get a kind of summary of if you have PTSD. And first of all, I have heard some people try to make the comparison that their combat PTSD is somehow it's like some kind of oppression Olympics, that it's more valid than PTSD from some other cause or whatever.
Nope.
Right. Yeah,
I disagree.
I would disagree with that as well. The PTSD, it's a concept of anything. You could say you have a cold. Okay, well, we can diagnose that as a cold. Well, there's severe cold, and then there's little cold. You still take the same medicine, or it's still called a cold, realistically, correct?
Yeah.
PTSD from getting shot or shot at, or PTSD from like sexual trauma. PTSD from having, being in a controlling, quiverful relationship or whatever, quiverful marriage for dozen years and pumping out 8 kids. All of that is valid. It's all equally valid, and it's all relative to the person and it's the lived experience.
Yes. So that I would say, regardless of what kind of PTSD or mental health issues going on, be aware of what the issues are so that you can better yourself.
Yeah.
Don't suffer anymore. If I could say anything to anybody, it'd be like, my God, love yourself and no more suffering. Like really fucking try to better yourself and identify these root issues.
Yeah, and define it. You don't need to know the scientific names for it like I do. I'm just a nerd like that. But knowing that, hey, I'm face blind, I can't, if like I'm looking at Chris on the video here, I look away, he has a beard and glasses and is white and has a wide nose. That's all I know. Like wider nostrils, like you don't have a skinny nose like me.
I see.
You've got wider nostrils than me. That's all I can tell. I couldn't even remember if you were bald or not on top.
God, I hope I'm not.
How your hair was on top or anything.
Man, I hope you're never a witness to a crime.
That's why I as a military intelligence analyst, because I couldn't remember all these things. They wouldn't diagnose it at the time. But.
So PTSD specifically, and I know you've already pretty much laid this out, but kind of a brief, if someone has PTSD, what are the most important things to remember as far as treatment?
Start with a physician or a trained professional you trust so that communication can be effective.
Yeah, talk to a good psychologist
or therapist, whatever.
Doctor,
just work with someone you trust. Make sure it's not just like, otherwise you're just wasting your time, and you'll feel that way too. And you know. I
first opened up to my physical therapist, and it was my physical therapist who got me to the VA therapist, and I tried 3 before I found one I liked.
Okay, so get a good therapist, basically. Find someone you click with.
Yes.
Be aware of identify your triggers. Work as you can with them, with your therapist, or however, whatever behavioral therapy works for you. But my big thing I would say is remember that even when you're having a PTS incident, even if it's an outbreak, like a full on amygdala over response, which is what a PTSD outbreak is.
Right.
And the amygdala, controls fear, the fight, flight, freeze, or faint response. Some people have PTSD and they will faint. That does happen. Some people have PTSD and they'll freeze. I've known people to do that, to freeze and just fall over from PTSD triggers. And some people, you immediately go into fight mode, which is what combat veterans are trained to do. Where our brain is programmed in basic and in our training to be and go into fight mode whenever there's any type of a trigger.
Right.
So, like for me, someone, I used to wear, I took all my issued shirts, painted the disabled combat veteran approach with caution across the back. Because I was injured in the back, people would bump into me from the rear, and I used to hit them with my cane, or like turn around, pick them up by the neck. And I'm 6'6" and fairly strong. I can pick a guy up and hold him up against a wall like Darth Vader, and did it a couple times. And that was when I started seeing therapy. But,
and Chris, there's some really good examples out there. I was going to also, just to go back, I was going to say mindfulness and breathing exercises really helps.
Oh, yes.
I'd start with that just because it puts oxygen back upstairs, really helps, and instantly lowers the heart rate, all that stuff. But if you wanted a little bit of some really basic small tidbits of info for it, there are some great TED Talks on YouTube. You can type in and do PTSD, and you'll have like 10 great examples from professionals and all that stuff.
Brene Brown.
I mean, the movie The Present Trauma, there's a lot of really, really good stuff out there if people want good examples that can give a visual understanding too.
If you could, can you message me, Hiram, some of those links so I can throw them in the show notes. You don't mind?
I will find them as I can. The one name I know offhand because I was continually recommended it by my therapist, and I've watched her thing so many times. I think there's an accent up over one of those E's, but Brene Brown.
Okay.
All of her TED Talks and all of her talks are great. But remember that also what is in your head or what, you know, it's valid. It doesn't have to be real, but it is valid.
That's good. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because if you think no, it's this isn't valid. Like it's not real enough for me to complain about, for me to mention to someone. This my thoughts of suicide every morning. Yeah, I'm not going to tell it to anyone. I'm just going to But no, if it's bothering you enough to think about it twice, if you've got PTSD and you think about it, it's valid and it's fine to it, and it is not only fine, it is admirable to admit it. It's more admirable to admit it than to hide it. There's no strength in hiding it.
I agree. The only strength comes from dealing with it and moving on. Yeah, not staying stationary and dwelling in the negative.
Yeah.
Be present, mindful, and really try to move forward.
All right, y'all. Was there anything more you'd like to mention before we log off here?
Oh gosh. But blessings on the country. That's what I'd say. Blessings on everybody and anyone suffering. Man, love your way.
If you I highly recommend a Fitbit or similar thing if you have PTSD for monitoring your blood pressure and your sleep. That's what I say.
And thank you, Chris. This has been a real honor and a privilege. Thank you.
No, I really, I mean this seriously. I really appreciate y'all coming on because I know it's not always easy to talk about these issues. And I think it's admirable when guys like you come forward and tell your stories because it helps a lot of people that are afraid to, come forward and talk because, like you said, they're afraid they won't be heard. That's not real, somehow not valid or whatever. And I think when you come forth, you kind of give people the courage to do it for themselves.
Oh gosh, I hope so.
Oh yeah, there's nothing that is not courageous. It's cowardly to hide from your problems, from whatever is plaguing you, whether it's a bad knee or a bad brain. It's cowardly to hide from it, and it'll only hurt you in the long run.
Well worded.
All right, y'all. Well, I don't want to hold you up any longer, but I want to thank y'all for coming on, like I said before, and y'all stay safe, and thanks for serving our country and all that.
Thank
You guys. I don't know. You guys are awesome. I don't know. All right, y'all. Well, y'all take it easy.
Thank you. You too.
All right, y'all. Well, that was the interview. Wow. I don't really know what to say. I want to appreciate, really do, and I said it already, and I'll say it 15 fucking times. I don't care. These are the kind of people that we need to come forward and talk about these things because all too often, and this is still true, especially in military culture, which is very male oriented still, it is still considered weakness to talk about these issues. And I think still in general society, it's considered somehow unmasculine to talk about your feelings. This, of course, we've seen the outlet of this toxic masculinity showing itself in sexual assaults, and don't think it doesn't play into other issues like trans people being murdered because of toxic masculinity. They somehow think they're gay because they were with a trans person. I mean, it's just toxic masculinity is just oozes into everything and really is just a horrible fucking social disease. But anyway, so yeah, thanks to them for coming on, and I'm sure if y'all have any questions you want to ask them, I still can message them. I'm not going to speak for either one of them as far as Facebook because I don't know them like that. But if you want to ask me, I could pass it along or whatever. If you want to leave a voicemail for the show or whatever, because these are important issues and all mental illness is valid regardless of the source because fighting your own brain, fighting your own mind is the biggest battle. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Is the biggest battle you can face, and I've done it myself. I've been a victim of that myself. Not to that extent, obviously, but I've had my own bout with mental illness. Anyway, so I hope y'all enjoyed. I mean, enjoyed's not really the right word, but I hope y'all learned something from that. Of course, if you want to check out the show, you can come to the podunkpolymath.com. The music is by cdbaby.com/cd/. New and improved logo by the Catman himself, Jeff Prebig Jr. Of course, go check him also out on jeffprebig.com where he does his Extra Life charity where he plays games for money. Must be great. No, I'm just kidding. It's great. It's a great cause. Of course, I'm on Twitter at podunkpolymath. I on Facebook / the Podunk Polymath. Of course, there's the Facebook group, the podcast Podunk Polymath Podcast Posse, Facebook.com / all that with periods in between because that's so original. Of course, if you want to give money to the show, you can always go to my Patreon page, patreon.com / the Podunk Polymath. For as little $1 a month, you can support me in my ever failing cause to make myself feel like I'm worth something in this pathetic, fucked up world. Of course, if you look on the sidebar there, you'll see that you can subscribe to me on RSS, iTunes, Stitcher. There is a Twitter box where you can look at my tweets and subscribe to my Twitter account. And of course, there's also the Patreon button there, recent posts and recent comments. Of course, also the 615-378-7676 Popo is the face voicemail line, excuse me. So you can call, leave me a message. I have to beg people. I'm not begging. Fuck you. Either you do or you don't. I'm not begging anymore. Fuck you. So I think I covered all the bases. I didn't have my usual phone because my phone's dying. So I didn't want to risk looking at my about page. Anyway, so again, and I don't care. Hiram and Nate, all the love for them coming on and sharing their stories and their experiences. I hope y'all learned something and I hope it helps you. And if you need help, don't ever hesitate to ask anybody for help because you are important and you are loved. And hell, I ain't nobody, but you want to talk to me, I'll talk to anybody. I mean, if you're struggling, So anyway, until next time, y'all take it easy now, okay?